Hello friends, this video on Principles of Inheritance Part 39 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So now that we have discussed about mutations as well as recombinations, it is time to introduce variations. Now whenever mutation happens or whenever recombination happens, what happens? We see new varieties in the offspring. We see new traits or new characters in the offspring. And that is what we call as variation. Vary means to change. So changes which we see in the offspring. So you talk about any organism. So if you talk about organisms where asexual reproduction takes place, for example amoeba or hydra or yeast, so there also the reproduction happens by either fission or budding. So these are the methods which they use for their reproduction. But even in these methods, what happens is DNA copying takes place, right? The DNA gets copied. That is what happens when your nucleus divides to form two nuclei. So basically the material inside the nucleus is also getting divided, so the DNA is getting copied. Now during the copying of this DNA, some errors can occur by chance, and these small errors can give rise to variation in the offspring. So this is how variation comes into play even in case of organisms which reproduce by asexual reproduction. So here you can see, let us suppose if this was the original DNA and this is the copied DNA. So there is a small error while copying it, and this error, since the sequence has changed here, so it will synthesize a different protein, so the trait will be different. So it will, the new offspring which will be formed will have some differences, and that is what we call as variations. So here you can look at the example of amoeba. So if you see, this amoeba has a slightly longer arm here, and as a result when you compare it with the parent amoeba, it is little different, and this is what is variation. So not only asexual reproduction, even in case of sexual reproduction, variation is seen. So that is what we were seeing so far. You talk about any of the animals, whether it is elephant or fishes or giraffe or human beings. So everywhere their offsprings look similar to them because they have their basic body structure and design similar to their parents, but they are not always exactly identical. So a baby elephant looks like an elephant, so it has got the basic structure like that, but it is not exactly identical. There might be certain changes, maybe in the shape of the ears or in the shape of the trunk, or somewhere some changes might be there. So in a very similar way, even in case of human beings, each one of us, we might resemble one of our parents, or we might have certain traits which we have inherited from them. But at the same time, we also have quite a few new characters, and those new characters which are seen, they are variation. So from where does this variation come into picture? Because when the sexual reproduction happens, what happens? The sperm and the ovum or the egg, they both fuse together. So what do the sperms have? Sperms have 23 chromosomes, that is 22 autosomes plus 1 sex chromosome. Similarly, the egg will also have 22 autosomes plus 1 sex chromosome. So these two will combine with each other to form the zygote, which will later form the offspring, right? So now for each of these 22 pairs of autosomes, each of them will have one set of chromosomes. So these two set of chromosomes will combine here the pair of homologous chromosome, right? So now when these homologous chromosomes combine together, or when these gametes were formed, each of these chromosomes would have already undergone some sort of crossing over, some sort of recombinations would have already taken place. So some mixing of traits would have already happened, right? And also there might be certain mutations during the entire process of cell division, and all these things will account for the variations which will be seen in the next generation. So this is how variation takes place. So the two important processes which give rise to variations are recombinations, which happen due to the process of crossing over during meiosis. So recombination is one phenomenon responsible for variation, and the second thing which is responsible for variation is mutation, that is a change in the gene or chromosome structure and number. Now that is why we see that if you consider a human couple, right? So here you see their kids, they have so many similarities with their parents because these genes have been inherited as it is. Similarly here also if you see, they have the exact similarities, but there are few traits which are completely new, like the blue eyes. None of the parents have blue eyes. Then from where did the blue eyes come? Maybe one of these parents had a recessive trait for the blue eyes, or maybe it was present in one of his grandparents, so which was a hidden trait in one of his parents. So there are many ways, right? And during recombination, maybe some, like we see incomplete dominance also, right? So some sort of blending would have happened and a new color is formed. So there are many ways by which new traits can be formed, but these new traits which are seen, they are termed as variations. So this is how variations or new changes are seen in an organism, and sometimes if these variations are helpful for the survival of the organism, sometimes they become a part of it. For example, when this guy has blue eyes, later there is a good amount of possibility that his kids might also have blue eyes. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.